Then, of course, there's this side to it where someone actually buys your work and you print it out and you feel honored that someone wants some of your photographs on their wall. So that's always a nice thing to know, that people think that much of your work that they'll display them in their home or elsewhere. So the other day I did this video about photography pet peeves, and I really had to think twice about it as to whether I wanted to do it or whether I wanted to put it out. I still don't know if it was the right decision, but it was my decision, so I'll live with it. I happened to stumble across a video the other day by Thomas Heaton and Gavin Hardcastle. They did together, but they put it out years ago, and they were talking about some of the elements of being a YouTube photographer. And one of the bits of advice that they both said was, you know, just be yourself, put out the content that you want to put out. And so even though I knew that, and I kind of abide by that rule myself anyway, mostly because that comes from me from writing my novels. You know, I just write the stories that I want to write. If people want to come along for the ride, that's great. I hope they do. But if I try to force it and write about, you know, for a while there it was all about vampires, and you know, you try to write for an audience, forget it. You're not going to enjoy it. And I guess the YouTube channel is kind of the same way. If I start trying to do content thinking that it's not that I want to ignore my audience, but I also don't necessarily want to try and force my way into an audience that I don't believe in. Does that make sense? So I put that video out, and now I thought, I know the clouds kind of going behind the sun's going behind the clouds and all, but now I thought I would do a video on some of the good things, other than being in the shadow all the time. Some of the good things about photography. And in the last one, you know, I griped about people always wanting things for free. But the flip side of it is, you have to look at it, is that at least they think enough of your work that they want it, right? Because if they didn't like it or they thought it was crap, they wouldn't have asked for it even if they wanted it for free. And then even on the more positive side, tomorrow I'm going to send out 2 large prints that I sold, because someone thought that much of my work that they want to put it in their home and showcase it. And that's a good feeling. You know, when you sell prints, it really does make you feel good. And so that's the other side of people want it for free versus people that'll think enough of it, not only they want to hang it, but they'll pay you for it. That's one of the good things about photography. Another good thing is, in a way, I'm on my way to see if I can find my buddy Henry. And you think, well, who's Henry? Well, Henry's a heron that I see pretty much every morning. Oh, guess what? Just found Henry. Let's see if I'll switch it around. You too can see Henry. There's Henry. And there's my favorite spoonbill. We're both together right here underneath this tree. Henry, I see him most mornings. And Henry's one of the nice things about photography, is that I get to see him. He's kind of used to seeing me. He looks like he's about ready to take flight. He's not too sure of me right now. Maybe that may not even be Henry. I haven't seen the front of him. There's a young juvenile who's out here sometimes who's a little bit more skittish, and that might be him. Henry got himself a little fish. I don't think that's Henry though. I think that's the juvenile. But the point is that you get to come out here and you get to enjoy seeing these birds, seeing the reaction to things, kind of enjoying nature a little bit. and they surprise you. Like I said, I thought for sure this bird was going to fly off, but no. The spoonbill as well, that one there, because it has a little bit more red around its wings. If you can see them in there or not. Oh, Henry just tried to get a dragonfly. No, it's not my buddy Henry, but I'm a little surprised that he's being the way he is. He's being pretty calm. Spoonbill's starting to squawk at me a little bit. He's letting me know that he knows I'm here, but he sees me all the time. Now the last thing you want is for that bird to fly away now, because he's under the tree here, and the tree will be in the photo. But as I was saying, one of the good things is you can kind of spend some time out here and relax, and enjoy life, and enjoy nature. And you get to see a heron and a spoonbill right next to each other. I think another thing that is a positive about photography, it teaches yourself a little bit about yourself. You know, how hard are you willing to work at something to improve? White heron just flew right past me. And I've always considered myself a fairly hard worker. I certainly have my lapses of being lazy at times, like anyone else. But with photography, what a lot of people don't realize, it's a lot of work to do it right. Sometimes you have to get up hours before you really want to, and you learn how much would you really want to stress out a bird in order to get a shot of him flying away. I don't like doing that. You know, there might be some photographers who, oh, I was trying to get up on that white heron, and he heard me talking and off he went again. That's the one who's skittish all the time. He's tough to get a photo of. Anyway, it teaches something about yourself. I'm sure there's probably photographers who would throw a pebble in the water or something to spook the bird so you can get a shot of him flying off. I'm just not willing to do that. If they fly, they fly. Like that white heron, he's going to fly away as soon as I get within 15-20 yards. There's nothing I can do about that. Keep my eye on that heron, because I came back, he was sitting under the tree, and I wasn't trying to get him to move away from the tree, but I guess he felt more comfortable in the water, so he's wading in the water. He may jump, he may not. He seems pretty content right now. Like I said, I'm not going to do anything to make him fly just so I can get a photo. The spoonbill flew off. The other one, there's about 6 of them that are along this lake that I see pretty consistently, and 3 or 4 of them are pretty skittish. They don't want you anywhere near them, and 2 of them are so-so, and this one that's sitting right over here right now, it takes a lot before he'll move. I could almost touch him before he would take off. But another good thing about photography that I like, it's a worldwide community. It's not nearly as large as what people would think, and people will help you. If you ask for help, most of them will help you. And I like that. I don't know that you can say that about every other hobby or every other industry, but for the most part, photographers they're pretty gracious and helpful people. You know, I get grumpy at times. Maybe that's why I did that last video. You know, you get older and you get to be the grumpy old man. But I'll still help someone. I don't necessarily want to send them 20 free prints. But if they ask me a question, I'll certainly do my best to answer it. Give them whatever advice I can. Sometimes maybe it's good advice even. But I do try, and I think most people do that. And I know even though I have a small channel, I can see my analytics, and I know that I have viewers from around the world, which proves my point of what a small community this can be, even on a large scale of it being around the world. And I do appreciate all my viewers and then people that comment. The last couple of videos I've asked for people to comment, and I haven't really gotten any comments. The video I made a couple weeks ago was, hey, if you want to show some of your images on one of my videos, one a month, almost like not a contest, because it's not, I'm not going to critique you or anything like that, but if you just want to show your images, I'm going to try and do one photo a month that I think is worthy of posting in a video. And if you want to come along for the ride, go watch that video, comment, and we'll go from there, which in part leads to it being, you know, a small community and people willing to try and help others. That little heron has kind of weighed it down the way a little bit. I have to go get a little bit closer before I lose him. The spoonbill's not going to move. He's just sitting there all content, probably resting. When I'm filming this, it's like 2:30 in the afternoon right now on a hot August sunny Florida afternoon. Well, partly cloudy, but still it's hot, a little bit of a breeze. So even the birds want to get underneath the sun or get out of the sun and sit in the shade for a while and relax. No, that's definitely the juvenile. It's not Henry. Henry has a lot more grown in feathers on his chest than this guy has. This is a young bird. Oh, there he goes. I missed him. See, as it happens sometimes when you're shooting videos, you miss the shot. Ha! Waited for a half an hour for that guy to go and move. I went back and forth, and of course as soon as I film him, he takes off. Isn't that the way? Oh well, it's not the end of the day, or it wasn't the worst thing in the world, because this time of day you get too many shadows on the wings of those birds unless their wings are out flat or the sun's behind a cloud and you get a little bit more even light. But if the sun's out, you're going to get, let me show you this photo here, too dark on the wings unless you really try to open them up in the shadows, and then you might add a little too much noise. So earlier in the morning is when I generally come out and shoot the birds. It was raining this morning and I didn't get out. I felt I needed a little exercise, which brings me to another point about, good thing about photography. It does get you out of the house, at least for me. Get you a little bit of exercise. And the other thing that it does, which is a good thing, it can make you think a little bit more analytical, which probably will help out in other parts of your life. And when you say, well, how can that be? Let me give you an example. Right now I've been going out and shooting birds with two different lenses. The 24-120 f4, well, the Nikon S lens, and the Tamron 70-300 variable aperture. I think it's a 4.5 to 6.3 lens. Don't quote me, I think that's what it is. And for birds you would think, ah, well, it's a no-brainer. It's the 70-300, and really you should be using a 600 or an 800. Not for these wading birds. You can see how close I can get. I know maybe in this camera shot it didn't show them as close as they really are, but I was easily within 10 feet of that heron and the spoonbill. But what I'm finding is, going back after about a month of using each lens, that 90% of my better images came off the 24-120. And granted, that S lens is a slightly better lens overall than the Tamron. Not by a lot, by, you know, a little bit. But the difference is that I find the focal length that I end up shooting the most with these birds is around between 40 and 70 millimeter, if you want those wings out. And it also makes me, I'm still learning it, still practicing it. I still miss a lot of these shots. Not as much with the herons now as the spoonbills. But the spoonbills jump. They jump up high when they first take off. Not all of them, but some of them do. And so if you're focused down towards the ground or down at the water level where they are, when they jump, those wingtips are like here, out of the frame. And so I've been trying to improve on understanding, as soon as I see that bird even start to move, to tilt that camera a little bit, make it go up, so I can try to keep, or The other thing is you back off on the focal length, and now you're back at 30 or 40 instead of 60 or 70 millimeter, but you're not as close. You know, you don't get maybe as much detail, so it's a trade-off. And you wouldn't think it'd be much of a trade-off, but it kind of is. So it makes you think in an analytical way, what's the best situation? What's the best lens? How do I hold it? And maybe there's a carryover in life in thinking in analytical ways. I mean, I have an accounting degree, so I kind of think in detailed analytical ways a lot of times anyway, but still. My buddy Tom, who I've talked about a couple times in some of these videos, he was a veterinarian, so he was a doctor. And man, he would break everything down into these analytical, you know, because when I met him and he first started teaching me about photography, I was shooting film. So he would have a breakdown as to what developer worked best with what film, and how long do you develop that film, how long do you keep it in the stop bath, how long do you wash it, and he had these tables with all the different times, and if he thought he had underexposed the frame or if he thought he overexposed it, because he would shoot with a view camera a lot of times, and so he'd be shooting single frame, not necessarily 35 millimeter where you might have 12 to 36 shots on a roll. He might take a one off and think, man, I underexposed it. And so he would know how to kind of make up for it in his development. So he was very analytical. And in a way, he taught me that you have to be analytical in a lot of regards when it comes to photography. Even now, I mean, people, they still look at their histograms, right? If you really want to understand your exposure, you'll look at your histogram. That's, in a way, being analytical. Another good thing about photography is it helps to keep your mind sharp. What I mean by that is, if you're not always trying to learn something new in photography, you're not really progressing, in my opinion. And I don't think there's anybody on the planet Earth who's a photographer who will say or think that they know everything about it. So no matter how good you are or think you are, you're probably going to learn something almost every time you go out. I know a lot of times I'll watch one of these videos on YouTube and I'll think, okay, that was a good tip, or I never realized that, or whatever. Sometimes it's just reassurances that, yeah, you know, even those guys or women are doing it the same way or think the same way. But it keeps you on your toes, keeps your mind sharp. So that's a good thing about photography. Another one is, kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, it's the socialization of it. You know, it's a small community, and occasionally I'll meet up with some people around here, the photographers, and you go out and you spend a morning and might even go out and have breakfast later on, and you just socialize a little bit, get you out of the house, and it keeps you in contact with people, especially, you know, when we went through COVID and all that, and everybody was all shut in, and I think some people are still kind of shut in to some degree. They never really got out of it. It's a shame. But if you go out with other photographers, I know the street photography people, they go out and do these photo walks and all, which is a good thing. They're socializing. So I think that's a good thing about photography. After the last video, some people might have watched it and got the impression I was really down on photography, which I'm not. It's just the opposite. I hope I didn't come across that way, but I still wanted to make this video and talk about some of the positive aspects about it, some of the things that I enjoy, because the positive aspects certainly far outweigh the negative by a wide margin. And so I wanted to do a video expressing my thoughts on that as well. In case you haven't noticed, some of you that have watched some of my other videos, I just like talking about what it's like to just kind of going around and taking pictures, being a photographer, and some of the bumps and bruises you take along the way, the ups and downs. And so if you're that way and you kind of feel the same way I do at times, you know, think about liking and subscribing. Come along. I'm sure I'll put more of these videos out, God willing. Thanks for coming along on my little walk here and letting me talk about some of the positive aspects about going out and being a photographer. And just remember, like I said in the last video, you are a real photographer. Until next time, I'll see you.